High School OT Studios, and happy week 7 of the high school football season here in North Carolina. And welcome to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Lots to get to from around the state of North Carolina here at the High School OT Studios. We're going to have media members from around the state join us and break down all of the action from a very exciting Friday night. All of the top 25 scores from around the state, those scoreboards have hit zero. Let's get right in to our Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. It starts with number 1 ranked Grimsley, the Whirlies, picking up a big win against an out-of-state opponent. They defeat Varina from Virginia 21-14 tonight. West Charlotte, they continue to leave no doubt in the MEC Power 6. The Lions defeat Independence with ease this evening 31-7. Weddington shuts out Marvin Ridge in a conference matchup 47-0. Millbrook, you saw that game on the High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken. It is a 28-0 win for the Wildcats over Leesville Road. Speaking of the MEC Power 6, Mallard Creek, the Mavericks, they pick up a 33-14 win over North Mecklenburg. Cardinal Gibbons heads down to Mecklenburg County and earns a 42-0 win over Ambassador Christian. More top 25 scores from around the state of North Carolina. Hoggard picking up a 34-0 win over New Hanover. Myers Park picking up a shutout 58-0 against Garinger. Shutouts were the theme of the night. 43-0 Cleveland defeating Fuquay-Varina. In one of the only undefeated battles in the state of North Carolina, Watauga remains unscathed. 42-20, a big win tonight on the road at Freedom. Crest all over South Point tonight, 42-7. Jordan defeats Greenhope and continues to roll in the Quad City 7 conference. That's a 48-14 win for the Falcons. 5 more top 25 scores to get to. East Lincoln defeating West Iredell. Garner in a wild Greater Neuse River Conference shuts out Smithfield Selma 71-0. Tarboro defeating Green Central 56-16. Brevard defeating Smoky Mountain 54-12. And Southeast Raleigh, speaking of that wild Greater Neuse River Conference, they come from behind and defeat Clayton tonight 22-19. Jonas Pope IV is going to join us in just a little bit to help talk about that one and all of the chaos that went down at Southeast Raleigh. In the meantime, I bring in Joel Bryant from High School OT to talk about all of the action that went on across the state of North Carolina this evening. Joel, lots to get to from some pretty crazy games. As you're initially starting to download and take in some of the scores that are beginning to go final, what has been the theme of this week and what has stood out the most to you so far?
Well, a lot of our undefeated teams have lost. We're keeping track of the undefeated teams each week, and a number of them have lost this week. We're going to go through all that a little bit later here. And also, there's some teams that are really starting to separate. I think the West Charlotte win over Independence. That's another good sign for West Charlotte after they crushed Mallard Creek a week ago. Another blowout win tonight for them against another loaded team. That team is starting to look like what we kind of thought they would coming into the season. There's Watauga doing it again against Freedom, just crushing another good team. Watauga is looking like possibly the favorite in 6A right now. And Evan, I do have a big score for you that just happened. In West Forsyth, East Forsyth rivalry game. Moses Morris called game. He had a 10-yard rushing touchdown in overtime, and West Forsyth beat East Forsyth 20-14 in that game.
Exciting
so nice
out there.
Alan Clemens.
Hopefully Logan Carter can join us from that one. He had a thriller on his hands there out in Forsyth County. I'm going to bring you back on in just a second, Joel. One of the intriguing games that happened down in the Sandhills tonight involved Union Pines and Harnett Central. Zach Seabuth was there taking that one in. Zach, Union Pines, that's a big conference win for them against a Harnett Central team that has a lot of talent.
Yeah, the Union Pines, they came out of the gate firing. 2 quick offensive possessions put them up 14-0. Their defense came out firing as well. First 3 Harnett Central possessions were a punt, turnover on downs, and a punt. And really from there, Harnett Central started clawing back with a few touchdowns in the middle of the game. But like I said, the defense continued to pour on, and then the offense continued to add on. And in the end, Union Pines came away with the big 28-12 conference win over Harnett Central.
This Union Pines team remains unbeaten in conference play, now 3-0, heading into next week's game at Southern Lee. What is it about this team that you think has allowed them over the last, month or so to shake off that really close loss to Pinecrest and kind of take off here over the last 4 weeks?
Just the grit from them. I mean, they keep telling me that it's one game at a time. They don't look ahead. They, look what they can correct from the mistakes they made from one game, especially tonight with the quick turnaround. They had South Johnson on Monday due to the weather. So, I mean, they just take it one game at a time. That 1-0 mentality you see from a lot of teams. They're not looking ahead to Southern Lee or try. They're just taking it 1 week, 1 day at a time. And I think that's what's really helping them, start off conference hot and continue rolling with this momentum.
You mentioned kind of that new mentality that they have. This is year 2 under Brian Till. You've seen a lot of this Union Pines program over the last few years. What do you think, now in year 2, that there's a full year of kind of culture established now with that program? Are we seeing kind of the fruits of their labor now that we're in year 2? Like what has really kind of helped this team really establish itself as a legitimate contender?
I think so. I think them, like you mentioned, buying into the culture that Brian Till has brought in. I mean, the kids, they seem to be having fun out there. The connection with them on the field is really good. The community's really starting to buy in. The student sections are starting to buy in. I mean, what Brian Till is bringing to this Union Pines offense and this team in general can really establish them as a top contender in 6A if they stay healthy, if they stay focused, if they limit the mistakes and stuff. I think they can really do some damage in 6A.
Well, Zach, we appreciate you joining us here on the postgame show. Again, a big win tonight for Union Pines. They remain unbeaten in conference play as they take down Harnett Central. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you for having me.
We roll on here on the High School OT postgame show. I'm going to bring Joel Bryant back in here. We talked a little bit at halftime of the Millbrook and Leesville game about how kind of wacky and crazy this Greater News River Conference is. At the time, Clayton was leading Southeast Raleigh. Now we sit here at 10-23. It's a big win for Southeast Raleigh and Coach Campbell over there. And then you look at like Garner running away with that big victory, Cleveland with a huge win over Fuquay-Varina. Have we learned anything since we last spoke a couple hours ago about this league?
No, I still think it's going to be that top 4, right? So it's Cleveland, Garner, Clayton, and Southeast. And what's happening is when those top 4 teams face each other, they're getting into really close games. So Garner defeated Southeast a couple weeks ago by 2 points. That was 28-26. And then tonight, Southeast beating Clayton 22-19. So that's just kind of how things are going to go in this conference. Anytime these teams match up, especially that Cleveland-Clayton game when that happens at the end of the year, it feels like it's just going to be close games no matter what in this conference. And the crazy thing is that, they're going to be beating up on each other, but I still kind of think they're all going to be ending up very high in the 7A East seeds. We don't really know exactly how this new RPI formula is going to, really impact things until we see it, basically. Perhaps with the higher percentage to your own win percentage this year, maybe they won't be as high as we're thinking just based off how it's been in previous years. But regardless, they're all going to be very serious threats in the 7A East.
Yeah, again, we're waiting on Jonas Pope before he's going to join us from that one. He had a chance to catch up also with a couple of players and coaches, so we're getting all that up. You'll have stories from that one. Another intriguing one here. Cary remains undefeated. Clay Best is going to join us to help break that one down.
6-0.
Yeah, what an impressive run it's been here for the Imps.
And the thing with Cary. So
it's wild compared to last year.
Last year, Cary had an NC State commit at tight end named Gus Ritchie. He transferred from Northwood. They had a UNC commit offensive tackle named Trey Blue. They had both these players last year. They did not win at all last year. They would put them next to each other, right? So, they would run behind Trey Blue, the left tackle, and Gus Ritchie would be the tight end, and they would run behind the two. And for whatever reason, they just didn't have success last year. And I know that they lost their defensive coordinator. Shavar Tyrants went to St. David's this year. So much change from that team last year, yet here they are. Coleman Tyrants and his team is 6-0, having one of their best years ever. And really I think it was a prove-it year for them. And the fact they've come out like this and tonight being Holly Springs, a consistent program, That's their best win of the year so far. I don't think anybody saw Carey being 6-0 this season.
Well, Joel, let's take a look at some scores from around the state of North Carolina. Let's take a look at some scores specifically from the 252 area code. Jacksonville, what a wild game tonight. 67-34 over New Bern. Over 100
points in the first half combined in that one.
73 in the first half, over 100 for the game. What a wild and wacky one there between New Bern and Jacksonville. Northern Nash a 58-7 win over CB Aycock. Southern Nash and Fike outdid Jacksonville and New Bern 68-54, a basketball score. Southern Nash hits their free throws down the stretch, wins that one big. Currituck defeating Northeastern. That's a surprising outcome for you, Joel. 28-7 there.
Yeah,
we keep rolling on.
That one's stunning.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain.
I still just want to make sure that one's real, so I'm texting people to make sure that really happened. But yeah, that's a real final score. Then that's an eye opener, and that's really going to change the way we look at both of those teams.
48-7 is what Rocky Mountain defeats Southern Wayne by. J.H. Rose drops 61 on South Central. Conley's up on White Oak 46-38. Did anybody play defense out east tonight? Jeez. Here's another surprising one, Joel.
Well,
we have a lot.
Play defense.
Currituck did play defense. So did Northern Nash and Rose. But there's a lot of 34 teams entered this week unbeaten. A lot of them have fallen tonight, one of them being Pasquotank. They fall to Hertford County 26-25. That was a wild one at the end. Hertford County comes from behind to win that one. Aiden Grifton defeats Kinston. Martin County shuts out First Flight. Farmville Central shuts out Bedingfield. And Havelock bounces back with a big win over West Carteret.
Yeah.
Any of those stick out?
Here. Yeah, so Rose winning 61-7 kind of was a shaky start to the year for them. And South Central, had some nice early signs this season. Rose winning 61-7 is big. I did just get confirmation from Coach Moore from Northeastern. They did lose 28-7 to Currituck. That's stunning. That's frankly stunning that they lost that game and by that margin. I don't think that changed anything for Northeastern, the way we think about them in the 3A East. But Currituck, that maybe they're a bigger factor in the 5A East than we were thinking. That's a conference there that has 3 classifications in now. Currituck's the only 5A in that conference. And First Flight is the only 4A in that conference. So very interesting that Northeastern lost that game. Can you pull up the scores again, Evan?
I actually have the 336 scoreboard loaded and ready if you want to take a quick look at that.
Okay, well, before we go to that, I want to mention Amari Pearson for Jacksonville, the junior running back. He had 6 touchdowns in that game. That 67-34 final over New Bern.
So here's some scores from the Triad area. Williams defeating Southern Alamance tonight, 48-7. Northern Guilford. Northern Guilford has been in some really tight battles. They defeat Ashboro 31-27. That's a big win for the Nighthawks. You mentioned that overtime game between West and East Forsyth, 20-14. West winning that one. High Point Christian shuts out South Lake Christian tonight, 38-0. Reedsville a shutout win over Rockingham County. In a rivalry game, Dudley, a close one with Benel Smith, they win that one 34-23. Northeast Guilford over Southern, 26-0. Page over Ragsdale by 1 touchdown, 32-26. Walkertown defeats Bartlett Yancey, 54-27. Central Davidson shutting out Lexington, 32-0. RJ Reynolds defeating Parkland, 22-6. What a start this year, Joel, for RJ Reynolds.
Yeah, 6-0 on varsity and 6-0 on JV. That's anytime you can do that, that's going to be a good sign, especially for a program like RJ Reynolds, which has, frankly, they've been kind of in the bottom for Forsyth County for so long, which is interesting because it's one of the oldest schools in that county. There's a lot of history at that school, and they found a young coach a few years ago, Joe Davidiak. They brought him up from Charlotte. He was an assistant at Mallard Creek, and he has totally turned that program around. He's keeping the kids that are close to RJ Reynolds kind of local and staying in that school. And yeah, the fact that they're 6-0 on varsity right now and 6-0 on JV, that's a very good sign for that program. We're going to see how they compete against the West and East Forsyths and Reagans. But regardless of how those games go, this season's been a big success.
Let's take a look at some scores from across the 704 area. We mentioned there were some big top 25 scores coming out of Mecklenburg County. Some other ones for you out of Iredell County. Mooresville defeating South Iredell 48-10. Palisades squeaking by Ardrey Keldonite 14-11. Kings Mountain shuts out North Gaston 31-0. Charlotte Christian, I mentioned that was a big 37-0 score at the half. They end up defeating Christ School tonight 44-21. Cannon was up on Charlotte Country Day at last check by 1 touchdown. Lake Norman shut out Statesville tonight 35-0. That hands the Greyhounds their first loss of the season. Providence, a big win over East Meck 35-7. That same score is what happens in the Community School of Davidson and Lake Norman charter game tonight. Monroe defeating Parkwood 40-7. Joel, you mentioned this is a big win for East Rowan. They defeat Salisbury 27-24. Let's get to that one in just a second. Sun Valley defeating Cuthbertson 35-3, and Northwest Cabarrus defeating Carson 49-14. But a big win for East Rowan.
Yeah, they hadn't beaten Salisbury since 2016. They didn't play for a few years between, I think, like 2017 to 2021. I don't think they played, but they did play the last 4 years, and they lost every single one of those. Yeah, nice win for that program. Salisbury, definitely kind of in a rebuilding situation. You know, they're obviously one of the more storied programs in the state, but it's just not going to be their year this year. And it's a good win for East Rowan, getting some progress there in Rowan County.
I mentioned, or we talked a little bit earlier about that Clayton Southeast Raleigh game. I'm going to bring in Jonas Pope now, who was out at that game. He's going to join us here on the High School OT post-game show. Jonas, welcome in. And Joel and I kind of already had a little bit of a discussion about this game, but this conference in this Greater Neuse River Conference, these top 4 teams being Clayton, Southeast Raleigh, Cleveland, and Garner, it's going to be a dogfight to the finish here. And tonight was a good example. Southeast Raleigh lost a couple weeks ago to Garner in a really close one, but they turn around and win a close one against the Comets.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think in the preseason when Joel and I was doing the 919 preview, we talked about this conference and how deep this conference was and how tough it would be night in and night out. I think most people across the state probably thought tough road win for them, but Southeast Raleigh, especially after a couple weeks ago against Garner, but Southeast Raleigh really on the defensive side of the ball really had Clayton's number. I mean, a team that's come in here the last 3 games that had 50 points. I think 3 of the last 4 games having 50 points. Held them to 19. I mean, Aiden Smalls, taking nothing away from him, he was the best player on the field, made a couple of big plays. But overall, the Southeast I always do that. The Southeast Raleigh defense came to play. They picked them off twice, and then when Clayton was on the field on what could have been a game-winning or game-time drive, they got a crucial pick too. Really limited the big plays, you know, sunk their heels in and made plays defensively when it counted. And then they really showed, like, hey, we are a team to be reckoned with in this conference when we're playing that well on the defensive side of the ball.
You had a chance to speak to Keeson Elizer after the game. He's the Stanford commit for Southeast Raleigh. What did he have to say, and what did you see out of him? Because it feels like he really helps anchor down that Southeast Raleigh defense. And typically when the Bulldogs are at their best on that side of the ball, it's because he's at the center of so many different plays.
Yeah, he said it pretty much went down. It boiled down to them watching film this week and kind of knowing some of Aiden's tendencies and what he likes to do. But you're 100% right. Even if he had an interception in the second half, but even when he wasn't making tackles or breaking up passes, he was applying pressure. A lot of times when Aiden Smalls was running or running out of bounds, number 11 was right there behind him, chasing him out of bounds and chasing him down. He was putting pressure on the quarterback, putting pressure on the running back. You can see why he's an ACC guy, Power 5 guy. Even though you may look at his frame and he's a little thin for a 6'5", 6'6" guy, but man, athletic, can turn the corner, can make plays. Can make life really hard for opposing offenses, and that's exactly what the Southeast Raleigh defense needed tonight.
Well, it's always been the fun story since he's announced his commitment to Stanford is that Andrew Luck was the one who really helped kind of pitch him on, going out west and playing out there. So obviously they see something big in Keeson Elizer over at Southeast Raleigh. How does this momentum for the Bulldogs help vault them through this gauntlet of a conference?
I mean, that's just it. When you beat Clayton, which has been one of the better teams in our area the last few years, one of the better teams in the conference. I mean, you just got to – the sky is the limit, And especially when you consider how they did it without their starting quarterback. Like, Ty Powell goes down in the first half. They lean heavy on Duck Freeman and James Adams IV. Shout out to everybody, the certain name, the fourth. But those guys ran the ball extremely hard in the second half and showed, like, hey, even without our premier guy, the signal caller, we have a strong running game. We have a strong offensive line, and we just beat the team to beat, well, one of the two teams to beat in our conference, with a pretty impressive win. Again, they limited the big plays from Clayton and showed this defense is one of the top tougher defenses in this league, and they also proved that we don't need we'd rather have our starting quarterback, obviously, but we can win games without him with these two dynamic running backs we have. So yeah, and they got to think now, hey, there's not a team in front of us that we can't take care of business against, considering we just did it at home against Clayton.
Yeah, you saw Duck Freeman there. Obviously, he's an NC State recruit, multiple ACC guys there with the Bulldogs, but they helped lead them to a big conference win tonight and come from behind one at that, 22-19 over Clayton. Jonas is going to have a story, interviews, and all of that up later tonight on HighSchoolOT.com. Thanks, Jonas.
Appreciate you.
I bring Joel Bryant back in, and he's going to welcome in Leica Beebe to tonight's to the High School OT postgame show tonight. Leica had an exciting one down in the 910, Joel.
Leica, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. How you guys doing? What's up, Evan and Joel?
We're doing good. Hey, so Leica saw the James Keenan Midway game. Thought it would be a little bit closer than it was, but Leica, James Keenan comes away with a 42-22 win. Tell us all about it.
Well, it really came down to the James Keenan offense is just humming right now. And it isn't just because of their skill guys. Their offensive line just moves people off the spot at a ridiculous rate. Midway was not a bad squad themselves. They've got really good passing game with Tanner Williams and company. But it really came down to the James Keenan offensive line imposing their will, opening up lanes for Jeremiah Hull, who had a 4-touchdown night, two receiving touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 81-yard pretty much dagger to seal it in the second half. Talil Pearsall had some big plays. Cito Zelaya, CJ Hill, and even Eli Avon had a couple passing touchdowns, as I just mentioned. But really just comes down to the James Keenan offense humming. And if they take care of the rock, I find it hard for many teams, at least in the 3A East, that could stop this James Keenan offense.
Yes, that's where I was going to ask you next. So James Keenan was my pick to come out of the 3A East in preseason. Tonight, with Northeastern losing to Currituck, that's Northeastern's second loss already. Weren't really expecting them to have 2 losses at this point in the season. Actually, I wouldn't have expected them to have 2 losses all year coming into the year. Are you kind of in agreement with me that this might be James Keenan as the favorite in 3A East?
Absolutely. After seeing them twice, I saw them also against East Duplin earlier in the season. After seeing James Keenan twice, I do have them as the favorite in the 3A East right now. And contrary to last week, I did look up some of the scores this evening, and that was the first one that I saw because, as a side note, Currituck has been a very good team so far outside of week 1. So that's a huge win for them. But really, James Keenan looked really impressive offensively. They coughed the ball up one time after the defense forced a turnover on downs in the first quarter. But really, outside of that, like I said, if they take care of the football, don't turn the ball over, control the time of possession, their rushing attack is just very hard to stop, especially because they have a great offensive line, as I mentioned.
Yeah, that James Keenan win over East Duplin a few weeks back is even more impressive with what East Duplin has done since then. They win tonight 53-12 over Southwest Onslow. Before you go, Leica, just one thing. Is there one thing that this team really needs to work on, this James Keenan team, before we get to the playoffs?
I will say, as I mentioned, Midway's passing game did have a lot of chunk plays, especially in the first half. They were moving the ball very, very well, actually. They had cut the deficit to 7 twice in the first half after going down early. But if James Keenan can, limit, there's a lot of most of the contests, they can limit that and shore up the secondary. I think their defense will be hard to stop because 7 wreaks havoc with Cal Avent and company. They really do a great job in the games, so less than 3 years ago.
All right. Well, thanks to Leica for joining us. He's going through a rough patch out there in ENC, driving back home, going through some country there. But appreciate Leica for joining us all about that James Keenan win. They're looking pretty good in 3A East. All right. Next, we're going to go to a quick break here. We'll be right back with the Scoreboard Radio guys.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry. But most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions, like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk it out, NC.
Welcome back to the High School OT postgame show presented by our partners at Talk It Out NC. Remember, fall is here, and so is the Talk It Out NC Fall Giveaway. Now through November, start the conversation and enter for your chance to win. 6 lucky winners are going to receive a $250 grocery gift card. You know you want that this time of the year. Head to talkitoutnc.org to submit your entry. And while you're there, share what's on your mind. Talk about what's happening at the dinner table, plus tag Talk It Out NC on social media by sharing healthy recipes that you feed your athlete, or provide them with a short video of you cooking or other ways that you can spark that conversation during mealtime. Talk It Out NC's mission is to reduce underage drinking by fostering open, honest, and ongoing conversations between adults and young people. Don't wait. Enter today and make every meal a moment to start the conversation and stop underage drinking. We mentioned one of those few undefeated matchups left in the state was Watauga against Freedom. We bring in Jeff Link and David Jones from Scoreboard Radio. Guys, it was an undefeated matchup, but the heavyweight, Watauga, still the champion. They come away with a big win over Freedom tonight.
Yeah, and really, it was the Pioneer defense. I mean, just spectacular on the defensive side of the ball tonight. Everybody knows the prolific nature of the Freedom passing game with Caden Davis at quarterback, Kobe Johnson at quarterback, and they were entirely shut down. No completed vertical passes tonight. Everything underneath defended very well. Watauga holds Freedom to about 257 yards of total offense and a 42-20 victory. Cade Keller, the Watauga quarterback, 2 passing touchdowns, a 77-yard touchdown run. Everett Grider, the running back for Watauga, with a big night, 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. And this Watauga defense, either defending the pass or rallying to the football, looked as stingy, as fast, as physical as any defense I can ever remember in Boone. I mean, I don't see this team being challenged until Thanksgiving.
What's been the biggest thing with this team? Obviously, I saw Watauga a couple weeks ago, but Cade Keller at quarterback, obviously a different style quarterback than Maddox Green had been the last few years. But, I mean, Keller on the basketball court's an incredible shooter, and it feels like he has that accuracy when he can step back and throw the ball.
He had a big 77-yard run tonight, and I think David said it best on our broadcast. He's not as quick as Maddox Green, but he's faster.
Yep.
It's just that first move Maddox Green had, but Cade, when he got out, he outran the Freedom defensive backs, and we know how athletic Freedom is, and he was able to outrun them. So I think that's the big difference there. We were laughing in our broadcast as well, too. I said Maddox who? Because Cade Keller is just plug and play. And I think the biggest thing there is Ryan Hobbick. When you look at what he's done, I think this was win 121 that he's had at Watauga, 171 overall. And you know, you watch these kids at middle school at Watauga, they don't have a true middle school. They've got 8 K-8 schools, and they bring those kids into a district, and they come in as 8th graders and 9th graders, and you're like, well, man, they don't pass the eye test. And I've been up there and walked through the halls and been at Watauga High School when they're having their weightlifting class. He produces players that fit his system. He's by far, J.K. Atkins taking nothing away from him. He's a great, excellent coach that Freedom has. That was a great hire for him to come back home, and better days ahead for Freedom. But I tell you what, right now, it's just something else with what Hobbick does. I think he's the best coach in the state of North Carolina, bar none. What he gets out of this team, what he has produced up there, and the way that he is. And Watauga, Adrian Snow kind of got them to that next level, but where he has taken them it's just amazing what they've done. And they will benefit more from 8 classifications than anybody else, because now they get in that 6A. They don't have to worry about running into a team from Charlotte like Weddington or something. Yeah, Grimsley or somebody like that. They're going to play like-sized schools. And this is a team that they're going to be playing well into November.
Yeah, Joel Bryant has been pointing that out since the summer. There may not be a team in the state that has benefited more from realignment in terms of football than Watauga. Some other scores from around the 828 area code. That Hickory Maiden game was wild. Maiden was up in that one 21-7, and then the Red Tornadoes rattle off 31 straight in the second half there to win 38-21. AC Reynolds, a 14-10 win over Irwin. That's a big one for the Rockets. Murphy all over Rosamond tonight, 71-0. Franklin beating Tuscola 28-7. Robbinsville coming back in a thrilling one over Swain County, 23-20. Mountain Heritage defeating Polk County. East Rutherford defeating Drawn right now. Newton Conover 42-22 against North Lincoln. Pisgah defeating West Henderson. Hendersonville over Madison. High Brighton over Chase. And Mitchell over Owen. Anything stand out to you guys as you look across the state of North Carolina?
Well, we keep talking about in the Northwestern 6A, 7A. I think everybody thought that it was going to be Freedom and Watauga. So who is that third-place team going to be? And I think that became a little bit more clear tonight. McDowell, an impressive 5-1 on the season. They took care of South Caldwell, a high-scoring game tonight.
Over 600 yards of offense for the Titans in that one.
So Danny Brown, the quarterback and this is from Dan Crawley from McDowell, passing this information along to us. Danny Brown, the quarterback, 21 of 30 for 386 yards. He had 6 TDs to go against just 1 interception, 627 yards. So is McDowell going to be that third best team in the conference? St. Stephen's 21-0 over Alexander Central. And, you know, the impressive thing about St. Stephen's 2 weeks ago, getting blown out by Mount Airy early in that game, came back and made it a good game. So is St. Stephen's that third place team? High Brighton tonight, DK Mitchell, 6 touchdowns on the ground. That was a close game. That was a 21-20 game late in the second quarter. And then High Brighton kind of runs away with it and did some great things on the ground with DK Mitchell and Evan Lipford with another tremendous passing effort tonight. So we're starting to see a little bit of clarity in these conferences. We knew that they were going to be top-heavy, the 2 conferences that we follow closely, the Western Piedmont Conference and the Northwestern Conference. So it looks like East Rutherford, High Brighton are at the top. We still don't know who's going to be that third best team. Maybe RS Central, maybe Chase, after the way they played with High Brighton tonight. But I think in the Northwestern 6A, 7A conference, you're going to see McDowell St. Stephen's. I think that's going to be that third place team in the conference.
One game to circle. I think it's 2 weeks from tonight. Hickory and East Lincoln. Grant Lawless, the East Lincoln quarterback, for as great as these 2 quarterbacks were tonight going into this game, Grant Lawless appears to be just on another level. You saw the halftime adjustments that Joe Glass made in that rivalry game against Maiden tonight. He's one of the better coaches in Northwest North Carolina. So 2 weeks from tonight, Hickory, East Lincoln, get somebody at that game. That one's got all the makings of an instant classic too.
Yeah, Grant Lawless, the Wake Forest commit quarterback for East Lincoln. It's going to be an exciting one. 2 programs that have played for a state championship within the last half decade. Where are you guys going to be next week?
TBD.
Yeah, we're in that part of our schedule where we had things laid out, and now we're trying to look at matchups and what's going to be the best matchups. We've had, as I said, the Western Piedmont Conference. You had High Brighton and East Rutherford 2 weeks ago, and that's kind of ho-hum for that conference going out. And, you know, this one tonight was for the Northwestern 6A, 7A was the big matchup. So now we're trying to see what, you know, are we going to look at teams maybe, for example, at Patton and West Caldwell, 2 teams that are really searching for a win. Somebody's going to get their second win of the season. That might be a game that we do. We might also follow Freedom down to play St. Stephen's, because right now that's a huge game. St. Stephen's ahead in the standings 1-0 behind this Freedom team that's 0-1, or in front of this Freedom team that's 0-1. So that's a big game now next week for Freedom. So we don't know where we'll be. I know we won't be on the couch, though. We'll be in a stadium somewhere.
I like it. You guys have been busy on the road catching all sorts of football, and a big one last Saturday. I know you guys were going back and forth about that Virginia Tech NC State one. That ended up being a little unexpected as well. Well, we appreciate you guys as always. Jeff Link, David Jones, Scoreboard Radio. You guys can listen along and follow them throughout the season, and always great coverage. They had Watauga's big win tonight over Freedom. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We're going to bring in J. Mike Blake now. He had the High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken over at Millbrook High School. J. Mike, about 2 hours ago when you and I spoke at halftime, the last thing that we talked about was would Millbrook be able to come out of that locker room at halftime and find some offensive momentum to put that game to sleep? And they certainly did. Bryson McCullers 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. He finishes with 3. Obviously, he broke the game open with the big touchdown run late in the second quarter, but he was the man of the hour there in the second half, and ultimately it leads Millbrook to a 28-0 win over Leesville Road.
Yeah, just real quick about McCullers. I mean, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of feeling for most of the first half. You never saw him getting frustrated with anything, but there was nowhere for him to run. At one point on the night, he had 8 carries for 9 yards. And then out of nowhere, it was as if like a play from another game just like got dropped into this one, because neither team could move the ball, and the times that Millbrook could, there were penalties on that drive that kind of ruined any positive momentum. And then all of a sudden, 75-yard touchdown run. Like there was not enough defenders on one side of the field. You're like, what just happened? And with Millbrook's defense, 7-0 feels like a pretty big lead. And then when they get a score of 2 scores before the end of the third quarter, one on a long touchdown drive where they finally looked in rhythm, and then the other on a bobbled snap. Devin Goldston, the 2-way player for Leesville, he's going to Wake Forest University next year. He plays wide receiver, he plays defensive back. He also plays punter. And when he cramped up, a new punter came in, bobble snap, he gets drilled, sets up a short touchdown run for McCullers. He gets his hat trick. It was just Millbrook found ways to kind of finish plays. And there was so many, it was a kind of a weird, I don't know if I've covered a game like that or in a while at least, or I don't think I've broadcast a game like that in the last 2 years of the HighSchoolOT Game of the Week, where there were so many interceptions or big plays that were dropped, or like the guy landed out of bounds. It's like, who's going to finish this thing off? A lot of people in position to make a play on the game, and finally at the end, Millbrook was determined that they were going to be that team. It's a classic combination of football, right? A running game and defense. Millbrook showed that tonight. They had those two things together that really helps you win football games.
Millbrook, their aspiration obviously is to go far in 8A, but in order to get to that point, you got to win this conference, and they dealt with the 2 best teams outside of them in consecutive weeks, and they aced those 2 tests. 56-7 combined over Rollsville and Leesville Road. 28-7 last week against the Rams. 28-0 tonight against the Pride. We raved and continue to about Millbrook's defense and just how much pressure it put on Leesville Road tonight. And I'm sure we can sit here and continue to talk about the Wildcats front 7, but the key to this Millbrook team, I think, lies at the quarterback position. And this was a Leesville Road defense that had not allowed a touchdown in over a month. And Bryson Gray comes out, completes over 20 passes for nearly 300 yards tonight. And he gets his passing touchdown to boot at the end there, making it 28-0. What did you see out of Bryson Gray that worked so well?
I want to just say, like, this is not the template of the team that usually emerges in the East, whether it is, the 8A or 4A champion. It is a team that is they're not spread, and they're running triple option or like just power all the time. They are this unique balance offense that just will get yards, like 8 yards here, 7 yards here, 6 yards there. And then it sets up the shots that they can take downfield. Bryson Gray is like, he just got better and better as the game went along. Again, like they just roll him out to the right, roll him out to the left, and then he delivers the ball on the money to someone in the flat, and maybe that guy makes someone miss, and then it's a bigger gain. And again, like that's usually your 8A, which in the past was 4A. Offense looks a little bit different than this, but the way they play means that they're not taking these risky chances deep. And I don't mean in a bad way that they're having safer routes. That's a good thing, that they are protecting the football while also moving the ball, while also relying on this dominant defense. It's a really unique design that I personally haven't seen like up close and personal, but it works really well. And it's very frustrating to defend because Millbrook at their best is going to put together the 10-play drive that breaks your back while also stifling you on defense. It's a tough combination. I mean, this is why Joel has them ranked number 1 in the 8A East. This is why they're ranked number 6 in the state. All these things together work really well. Look, if you said, hey, why don't we try what Millbrook's doing on offense? That's good, but do you have the defense that help goes together? I think Millbrook does. Tonight also, his weapons are the 2 Malachis. Malachi Thomas, more yards per catch, 6 for 108 and a touchdown. Malachi Gilchrist gets open with every route in the book. 11 catches, 107 yards. Those 2 guys with 1 yard apart and combined for 17 receptions and 213 yards in the touchdown together. Again, just really impressed by what they were able to do. And here's your stat on the defense. If you're wondering, how good was the defense? 79 yards of offense for Leesville tonight.
Wow. J-Mike, Evan was kind of alluding to this. So with Millbrook getting these 2, frankly, their 2 biggest games in conference play out of the way, the thing always with high schoolers, with these teenagers, is just kind of keeping them focused, right? Because these kids know that they're good. They know that they just beat their 2 best, the 2 biggest threats to them. How would you go about just kind of how would you approach the rest of the season, knowing that they're frankly not going to face as much of a test as they faced the last 2 weeks, and they're going to need to keep focused before we get into playoffs here?
That's, I think, where a lot of coaches, and I'm sure the Millbrook coaching staff has already instilled this in them in some of their earlier games, where you may blow somebody out and you're saying, guys, we can't be happy with that. You're no longer, when you have state championship aspirations, and let's say all offseason Millbrook's been preaching that, then it's an easy transition to say, guys, yes, you won 56-0, but you left this, and this out there. The scoreboard is no longer our indicator of we're happy with this game or we're sad with this game. That's what other teams do. We're looking at the little things from now on. Okay, 42-0. Great, but we dropped 5 passes. We had this many penalty yards. Those are what you have to say, and just say, guys, yes, against a good team, win however you can. Against these other teams, let's fine tune and be perfect, and not just say, oh, we won, good job, pat ourselves on the back, because that mindset gets you sent home earlier than you want to in the playoffs.
Awesome. Well, J-Mike, appreciate the analysis here. Go get some rest. It was a busy night for you. Lots of talking with you and Tyler there on the broadcast. I appreciate it, J-Mike. We're going to go to a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk to the legend, Clay Best.
Don't fall for the myths. Get the facts about underage drinking.
Myth. Teens bounce back fast, and teenage athletes can perform just fine after a night of drinking alcohol. The fact is, alcohol can hinder athletic performance for up to 3 days, delaying recovery and causing long-term issues with muscle loss and weakness. But don't just take it from me.
Choosing not to drink as an underage athlete has really helped me significantly. I've been able to focus, keep my priorities straight, and it's helped me separate myself from, many other people.
Get more facts at talkitoutnc.org.
Welcome back to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Just like winning these big games that we've been talking about all night long, preventing underage drinking takes a lot of teamwork. Parents and teens, you can visit talkitoutnc.org for the resources to start the conversation about the risks of underage drinking. Join Talk It Out NC to cheer on safe and smart choices. Let's take a look at some final scores that came in from across the 919 area code. And we mentioned earlier, Garner had that big 71-0 win over Smithfield Selma. We had Jonas Pope the fourth on. He broke down Southeast Raleigh's 22-19 win over Clayton. Rollsville a 51-0 shutout win over Broughton. A good bounce back for the Rams there. Apex Friendship shuts out Apex. The Patriots bounced back from last week's loss to Jordan. Middle Creek a big win, 38-7 over Sanderson. Southwest Edgecombe defeats Eastern Wayne 28-21. Corinth Holder shuts out Wakefield 36-0. Enloe a big win over Athens Drive 50-22. Southern Durham and Northern Durham tangled in the Bull City tonight. It was actually a 66-0 win for Southern in that one. West Johnson defeating Triton 16-7. A thriller East Wake in overtime, defeating Heritage tonight 34-28, and Franklinton defeating Knightdale 20-3. But probably the biggest result of the night in the 919 that's not on this scoreboard right here, Joel and I talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but it's the story of the Cary Imps, who last year had a state commit and a Carolina commit and didn't win a game, and now they sit here on October the 3rd unbeaten. And that is because they had a thrilling win tonight over the Holly Springs Golden Hawks. And Clay Best was there for High School OT. He joins us now. Clay, what is it with the Imps, man? They've really found some magic this season.
They know how to win. One of those, we get to middle, late second quarter, it's 14-all. And Holly Springs is driving. The Cary forces a punt. Cary attempts to block the punt. One of those plays where you're like, there's 5 guys within 2 yards of the punter. How do they not block that punt? Well, they didn't block the punt, but they roughed the punter. So, of course, Holly Springs goes down and scores, goes up 21-14. And you're thinking, oh, this is where Cary's kind of runs out possibly. But no, Cary comes right back down the field. You get the Nick Renna and James Melvin 1-2 combination, and that read option that's almost like, I mean, it's almost single wingish in the way they come around the edge of the line and just find that little seam. They go right down the field. They throw a deep pass that Michael Wallace picks up about the 3-yard line. There's 4.3 seconds left when they spike the ball. So you're thinking, oh, they've got a good kicker. They'll probably kick the field goal in 21-17 at halftime. No, they go for it, and they call Nick Renna's number. He goes around the left side of the line, touchdown. Then they say, hey, let's do it again. So they get the 2-point conversion. It's 22-21 at the half, and you're kind of, what just happened? And the second half was all about everything else for Cary. Yes, the offense was there and still produced, but they forced 2 fumbles, intercepted a pass, got 1 fumble at the 3-yard line with the Golden Hawks about to go in, blocked a punt. Melvin ran that back for a touchdown. Holly Springs does get it to 30-24 with a field goal. Ensuing kickoff. Skylar Joyner runs the kickoff back for Cary, 90 yards for a touchdown, and it's 36-24. And to continue Coach Coleman Tyrus' Cary theme of the night of, hey, we're going to be aggressive on special teams. They try an onside kick, and they are one kind of skidded ball on the dewy turf from recovering that and having a chance to add to it. But Holly Springs does score one more time, ends up getting the ball back. Cary makes a play, gets a little bit tip pass at the line of scrimmage. Clyde Higdon picks up the interception, and they're able to run out the clock. And what do you know? The Imps are 6-0. This is the first time they've won 6 games in a season since 2011.
Wow.
Just a very exciting night for Cary. Some of the offensive linemen coming up to Coach after the game when I was kind of waiting to talk to him, joyful tears, just kind of – there's 21, 22 seniors on this roster. You talked about last year, no success as far as win-loss records, but just joy in what they've done so far, and I think as much what they feel like they still can do. So yeah, just a big night for the Imps, and not what Cary has been used to experiencing in football season for a while.
Well, that is a very prideful community over at Cary with a lot of athletic history and certainly a great season so far at 6-0 as they look to continue it next Friday night on the road at Sanderson for a conference matchup. They have a bye week and then 2 really crucial games for the Imps to close out the regular season, but they're both on their home field against Middle Creek and Cardinal Gibbons. Again, a big conference win tonight for Cary and Coach Coleman Tyrants, 36-31 over Holly Springs. Thanks, Clay Best.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
We continue on here on the High School OT post-game show, bringing in Joel Bryant and then Chris Miller from the Jacksonville Daily News. Chris, you had some exciting ones tonight, obviously, including that crazy Jacksonville New Bern score.
Yeah, who would have thought that Jacksonville would have posted 67 points in a win over New Bern? I mean, I knew it had a chance to be a high-scoring affair tonight. New Bern's given up a lot of points, and Jacksonville's defensively has given up some points the first month of the season. But there was no way in the world I thought this was going to be a 67-34 game. But credit the Cardinals. They those young running backs, the guys that played behind Damon June last year, have really stepped up and have performed well. So the big victory on the road for the Cardinals, and it sets up a home showdown with J.H. Rose next week.
Yeah, I was told that Amari Pearson, the junior running back, had 6 touchdowns for Jacksonville. It's a very Damon June-esque stat line there. But Chris, you were at the Northside Jacksonville and Croatan game. Croatan was one of the undefeated teams coming to this week, but Croatan comes up short against Northside. Tell us how it happened.
I do have to say that Croatan is a lot better than I think a lot of people think they are. People look at who they played, and let's be honest, they haven't played the toughest of schedules, and they recognize that. So tonight would have been a signature win for the Cougars, but a great win for the Northside Monarchs, who are basically in the driver's seat now to win the Coastal Conference title. They win the game 30-28. They were up 30-21 in the fourth quarter, and Croatan makes a game of it with about 3 minutes left, and even then has a chance to get a stop and maybe get the ball back. But Northside converts 3 first downs in the final 3 minutes or so to seal the victory. So back and forth game. Anytime you thought, especially in the first half, anytime you thought one team had the momentum, the other team came back and scored a touchdown. At one point, Northside was up a touchdown in the second quarter, and then maybe 5 minutes later, Croatan was up a touchdown in the second quarter. So, like I said, back and forth, and Northside. This is one of their better teams that they've had in the last 10 years or so, and
yes.
But Croatan is also a pretty darn good team too. They impressed me tonight as well, but a good victory for the Monarchs nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Northside, Jacksonville, and Croatan are 2 teams that have been kind of rhyming of late, right? So not too long ago, they didn't have some really good years, right? So they're kind of having some losing seasons, but they're both on the rise now. Obviously, people in your area know all about Northside Jacksonville, but for the statewide audience, kind of describe this team. Who are some players in this team? Who are the guys behind this kind of turnaround they've had here?
Well, their quarterback sophomore is Reginald Gray III. He was more of a receiver last year. And, a good receiver, but they needed him to play quarterback this year because he can provide that offense with the several things: running the ball, throwing the ball. So he's really stepped up to become a really good passer. So he's done that. Gavin Davis, he's a junior. A lot of Northside's best players are juniors, and a lot of these guys were freshmen and sophomores on varsity when they were kind of getting their rear ends kicked by the Havelocks and the Jacksonvilles and some of the Greenville area schools. And now that they're in a different conference, things are kind of looking positive for Northside. But Gavin Davis, he's a junior, 5'7", 150 pounds, but is already the all-time leading receiver in school history. So those guys have done well tonight. Rely Anderson, a junior running back, rushed for 184 yards, probably the most yards Northside's rushed the last several years. So those are kind of the three-headed monsters for Northside. Cameron Napier is kind of a do everything. He's a senior, but they you know they have some talent, and like I said, a lot of these guys were kind of thrown into the fire as freshmen and sophomores the last couple of years, and battled against the Havelocks and Jacksonvilles and so on and so forth. So now that the playing field is a little even now, they're taking advantage of it for sure.
It's crazy. We're about, what, 3 weeks to go left in the season. About that's crazy to think about. So in terms of the rest of the season goes, what's kind of the big storyline you have kind of remaining? I know that you mentioned Northside potentially being in the driver's seat of this conference. They do have to play Havelock though that last week of the season, I think on Halloween. Of course, Havelock last year, but Havelock seemed like they rebounded this weekend's West Carteret. Are you kind of circling that game on the calendar, that Northside Havelock game?
And I think so. I think and people don't realize, I mean, as good as Havelock was last year, and I know those guys are still trying to get better and progress throughout the season. And Northside kind of has had some struggles the last several years. It was only an 8-0 ball game. Havelock only led 8-0 after the third quarter in last year's game before pulling away. So Northside was only maybe a play here, a play there from kind of finishing the deal in a lot of games last year. So now, like I said, now that they've been battle tested and they know what it takes to finish those games, they showed tonight that what they're capable of doing. So I did talk to the Northside coach, and they were really surprised of not necessarily that Jacksonville won the game, but the fact that how high scoring it was between the Bears and Cardinals. And the Jacksonville people want Northside to win the rest of the way, and the Northside people want Jacksonville to win the rest of the way because Northside's only loss is to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville runs undefeated. So just for RPI purposes, both teams want each other to win out.
So, Chris, we'll leave it here. So the big game is going to be next week. Going back to Jacksonville, the J-Tros Jacksonville game. It's going to be in Jacksonville. Is that the one you're going to be planning on going to next week, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I'll probably go to that game because if Jacksonville wins, I mean,
it's pretty clear.
They put themselves in pretty much the driver's seat for that conference title.
But Rose Knight, another 60-point performance from Rose Knight. They beat South Central 61-7. So it seems like both offenses are kind of hitting their peak right now. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it should be. And you're Jacksonville. You're pretty pumped up for that game. Havelock, New Bern, and Jacksonville all shared the Big Carolina Conference title last year. But Jacksonville has not won a conference title outright since the 90s. So, I mean, can you believe it? Jacksonville, they shared it back in like 2001, but they've not won a conference title outright. So a victory next Friday would kind of be a big step toward that goal.
Chris Miller does an outstanding job at the Jacksonville Daily News. Chris, where can people find your work this week?
Visit jdnews.com. I'm just getting home a few minutes ago from Croatan, so I have a reaction story, from the Croatan Northside game, a roundup recapping all the local action, and a photo gallery from the Northside Croatan game as well.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we always appreciate it. Good to hear from you, and get some rest after all your work tonight.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, we're going to bring Evan back in. Evan, a couple other notes I wanted to get across before we go here. So Hoggard beat Camden County tonight, 51-7. That was Paul Hoggard's 200th win as a head coach.
Holmes, that is, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking Hoggard, Coach Hoggard. You got me. So Holmes, the Aces, Edenton. Yes. We all make sure we get that right. They get very upset if we get that wrong. So Coach Hoggard wins his 200th game. Very impressive. For those who don't know, he was the coach at Richmond before. He's been other places. Rayshawn Elmore, the ECU commit for Porter Ridge, had 5 touchdowns and win over Piedmont tonight. Then Monroe, Jameer Jackson also had 5 touchdowns and Monroe's win over Parkwood. So a lot of big touchdown performances tonight, Evan, we're seeing across the state.
Yeah, some exciting scores to get to as well here. Let's take one more look at some undefeated matchups, and then before we close out the show, we'll bring in Logan Carter. We mentioned earlier he had a thriller out in Forsyth County. But Joel, here are some unbeaten results from tonight. Obviously, that Watauga Freedom game 42-40 Watauga winning that one. Arundel Parrott defeating Howard 42-8. That Northside Jacksonville game, Hams Croatan their first loss 30-28 in that one. East Lincoln over West Iredell 41-14. Mount Pleasant defeats Forest Hills. That's the first loss for Forest Hills 21-14 in that one. Jordan remains unbeaten with a 48-14 win over Green Hope. Ashboro loses its first game of the season. Northern Guilford wins that one 31-27. Lake Norman shuts out Statesville 35-0 to hand Statesville its first loss. Brevard remains unbeaten with a win over Smoky Mountain. We just talked to Clay Best about Cary's win over Holly Springs. Cleveland remains unbeaten with a win over Fuquay Varina, and Grimsley 21-14 over Varina from Virginia. More undefeated scores, Joel, to get around to from tonight in the state of North Carolina. Let's keep it moving with High Point Christian's big win over South Lake Christian. Hoggard, they played New Hanover 34-0, a big win for the Vikings. Kit Pride 38-0 over Northwest Halifax. Lewisburg defeating Nash Central. That was a really close one, 16-15. Millbrook 28-0 over Leesville Road. Joel and I spoke to J. Mike Blake earlier in the show, breaking that one down. It was the Alpaca Chicken game of the week. North Stanley shuts out Albemarle 37-0. RJ Reynolds 22-6 over Parkland. Joel earlier in the show raved about how the RJ Reynolds has done early in the season so far. Pasquotank picks up its first loss. Hertford County escapes with a 26-25 win there. A high-scoring one between Pender and Clinton, but in the end it is Pender 50-45. South Davidson shutting out Winston-Salem Prep 27-0, and St. Paul's shutting out E.E. Smith 35-0. Joel, you want to bring in Logan Carter here and close us out with this one? He had an exciting one in overtime tonight.
Yes, Logan, how are you doing, sir?
How's it going, man? Yeah, we had a TV game and an overtime game, so that's why I'm coming in last but not least. So yes, East Forsyth and West Forsyth faced off tonight. Big time triad matchup. West ended up beating East 20-14 in overtime. The guy we talked about, all preseason, Moses Morris, the running back behind that O-line for West Forsyth, he had, I think, over 200 yards rushing unofficially for right now. It was just incredible performance by him. I got to give it up to East, though. West got out to a 7-0 lead in the third quarter. It was ugly first half, 0-0. But J.D. Fulp and Christian Cepeda, the wide receiver for East, they connected for 2 big-time touchdowns. And I said, wow, J.D. Fulp, he's getting comfortable again. And I thought they had it. And this is something that I tell a lot of people, because East got down in the red zone when it was 14-7 early in the fourth quarter. I always say a high school team needs a quarterback, and my second position is a kicker. So they had to go for it on 4th and 10 instead of kicking it within the 20-yard line. So instead of going up 2 scores, they don't get that conversion there. And West Forsyth goes down the field methodically, runs out the clock, and scores with a minute to go to tie it up. And then we go into, lovely overtime. And there was something I did not know in overtime. If there's a personal foul, it's not an automatic first down for high school. So J.D. Fulp got knocked out of bounds, late hit, and they gave him the yardage, but it was still third down. So I thought it was an automatic first down. So that's something that, NFL, college, they have it, but not high school. But it was just a great win by West Forsyth. They've had some close ones this year with Grimsley and Richmond. And I think they finally pulled through with a great win over East tonight.
What's been the biggest surprise to you for both of these teams at this point in the season? Obviously, things never go quite the way we're expecting it. Is there one big surprise you have for each team?
I think the biggest surprise is the last 2 games, especially. I'm not trying to, I love East Forsyth as a grad from there, but it's interesting that they're not getting Jair Richburg the ball as much over the last 2 games that I've watched. That's been really surprising. They just are not connecting on the little fade route that they keep running to Jair. They're just not connecting on that in the red zone. That was how they started overtime. They threw it up to him, and it almost got intercepted. So that's been a big shock for me. But again, the big shock tonight was just Moses Morris. I knew he was good, but 36 carries, and he was just dominant all night. So you'll be able to see those highlights over to you guys, and you'll be able to see him here shortly. And it was a great interview by Rich tonight with Moses Morris as well.
Oh, good. Maybe Jair Richburg needs to go on social media and call his team. That's a joke.
I know, like they kept trying to run like jet sweeps with him and stuff. Like it's just I don't know. He's a big time recruit going to NC State, as we discussed in our preseason stuff, and it's very interesting that that they just are not connecting in the red zone yet. I know the first couple of games they did, but it's disappeared since then.
And speaking of NC State recruits, I know you weren't at this game, obviously, but it seems like tonight Reagan's offense finally really started nearing its ceiling. So they crushed Northwest Guilford. Do you have the final score on that one? I think last I saw was 41-0. So I'm assuming
that was the last one that I looked at as I was on the
Reagan
field.
won the game. I assume they didn't blow a 14-point lead.
Yes.
But what do you make of that team? So it seems like it took them a little bit. Kind of getting things rolling with Jacob Smith going back from the injury. Obviously, it's always tough to come back from such a long injury, but now at this point, they're putting up these kind of numbers. Could you see that Reagan coming out on top of this conference when it's all said and done?
I know that's what I kind of predicted in our preseason show, and I was a little worried after those first 2 weeks, but I really do think they have the offensive power. I was a little worried after they lost to Northern Guilford, but after that win last week against Lake Norman, that's a great win. They've had a couple great wins against Reedsville. That was a pretty dominant win over those guys. Mm-hmm. So I think it's definitely it's to lose. I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there. Like I really do believe that with that defense, and if Jacob's clicking, John Evans Jr. is clicking, that O-line's clicking, and the defense has been great so far. I think they can get out to a pretty dominant score in these two teams as of now, because they really want to move the ball methodically and just wear you down, because East has a great O-line, West has a great O-line as well. And they're just grounding and pounding the whole game. So I think if Reagan's able to get out, 17-point lead, it's going to be hard for one of these teams to catch up with them.
That's a good point. Well, before we even get to those games, I mean, Reagan has to get through RJ Reynolds and Parkland. Obviously, Reynolds is undefeated at this point. And Parkland, they've been known to pull up a big upset randomly. So who knows? But West Forsyth, East Forsyth will be the last two games for Reagan on the calendar this year. Logan, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. And I hope you guys are going to enjoy your night. I know it was a kind of a late game for you. Looking forward to seeing his interview and his article.
It's always with the TV games. I told Rich, I said, we're in for a long one before the game even started, and then we went into overtime. I said, well, I jinxed this even worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I did a TV game last week, and the kickoff didn't start until 45 minutes after the original planned time.
Goodness.
So, it was a late game for me last week, too, so I know the feeling.
But at least TV, it was a great game tonight. I was a little worried. I was like, here we are, it's TV, and it's 0-0 at halftime with 130 total yards for both teams.
Yeah, it's good old-fashioned defensive struggle and a good overtime finish, too.
It was great. It was fantastic.
Awesome, Logan. Well, we appreciate it, and we're going to see Logan and Rich's stuff later in HighSchoolOT. Logan, you take care.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Joel.
All right, we are going to bring Evan back in. Evan, any other notes for you before we get going here?
No, it's been an exciting weekend or exciting Friday night worth of football here. Again, you can go to highschoolot.com and get all of the recaps from some of the guests that we had on tonight's show. Go for it.
Robbinsville beat Swain County on a last-second field goal by a freshman kicker, Xander Luck Savage. His name is Luck Savage. So
what
he's
a
both
name.
Lucky and Savage. And
he was tonight. He was tonight for sure.
He proved it with the last-second field goal as time runs out. Big win for Robbinsville over Swain County, 23-20.
Another note that you had passed along throughout this show, a score that we hadn't gotten to, Randleman defeating Montgomery Central tonight, 22-21 in overtime. John Kirkpatrick had the game-winning 2-point conversion to walk things off there for Randleman. They had a good win last week over Lexington, so they keep things rolling tonight. But as I mentioned, a lot of these thrilling games that we've talked about, the Millbrook game's already up on highschoolot.com. You can read more about the Southeast Raleigh win over Clayton. That one's up as well. In the next couple of moments on social media, we'll have the clips, as Logan mentioned, of the walk-off touchdown at West Forsyth between West and East Forsyth tonight. Lots of exciting action, more from that Watauga game as well. Photos and stories and interviews and all of that you can see on HighSchoolOT tonight. And again, Get on Max Preps tonight. Give us your scores so we can have playoff projections when you wake up on tomorrow morning across the state of North Carolina. That's very important as well. One last thing before we go here on the High School OT postgame show. We remind you again, it is presented by Talk It Out NC. There's never a bad time to start the conversation to stop underage drinking. Visit talkitoutnc.org to learn more today about the tools that you need to start those conversations. And again, now through November, you can start those conversations and tag Talk It Out NC on social media. You can submit an entry on talkitoutnc.org or tag them on social media. Share healthy recipes that you feed your athlete, a short video maybe of you cooking or other ways that you help spark a conversation at mealtime. And 6 different lucky winners will receive $250 worth of grocery gift cards. So that's a nice little gift here heading into the holiday season and into the fall. Before we go, one last message from our partners at Talk It Out NC.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry, but most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions, like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk It Out NC.